We've got to be thoughtful and not thoughtless in feeding the mind, spirit, and soul. We've got to have the guts, the stamina, not only to talk the menu, but to walk the menu. That's why the JOA has stamina and is giving stamina to our athletes, administrators, and other stakeholders in our committed and undaunted efforts to build capacity, to provide enabling opportunities to be the best that you can be, and to professionalize sport administration. That's why the JOA has joined purpose and strength with our member, the Jamaica Sports Medicine Association, to give stamina to your palate and bellies. That's why the JOA and the JASMA have set our knives and forks on the table for an appetizing Eat Fit. Make no bones about it. We, the JOA, are all about giving body, sustenance, and sustainability in sport. In giving a menu of options in sport in fulfilling insatiable aspirations, particularly of our youth. We provide a cuisine of health and hydrate wellness. So, it's not what you cook up, it is what you cook and how you cook. It's not about being served, but about being serving. It's all about inspiring minds and bodies with the bread of good life and living, and not life's oily loaves. So welcome. Welcome to Stamina, a sports forum fueled by the Jamaica Olympic Association. Welcome to you in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and the global melting pot. Welcome to Stamina. You better have the guts to stay with us, to stay tuned, for we're going the extra mile in serving you a nutritious offering. Stay the course for what may very well be a 5-course meal for sport. Welcome, cheers, bon appetit.
So as Mr. Samyona said, welcome to all. Special welcome to our colleagues in the region from Trinidad and Grenada. Thanks for joining us. So this evening, we kick off with how to really count calories. Please welcome Patricia as she presents on the topic, how to really count calories.
As you hear the topic, you heard the word count. So you know what that entails. It has some numbers. So before you all run away and say, oh Lord, maths, I can assure you that the reason why I'm doing this is to try and simplify it for you so that you don't have to feel overwhelmed. These fuel types, you might be familiar with 90, 87, diesel, and so on. And that's what cars use to fuel themselves, okay? But in the human body, we have different types of fuels. They are called energy nutrients or carbohydrate, protein, or fat. So in terms of the human body, calories is energy nutrients, which is really just fuel for the body, similar to fuel for motor cars. The difference is while each motor car will use one type of fuel, for the human body, we use all 3 types of fuel together, but mainly for different purposes. Carbohydrate, as you probably know, is best for movement and exercise. Protein is best to fuel tissue growth and muscle structure, while fat is best for all other ongoing activities, and it forms the largest store of fat in the body. So what we're going to do now is that we're talking about nutrients, which is at a level that you can't really see. And to know what the calorie value of these nutrients are, you would have to go into a chemistry lab and analyze your foods for the different types of nutrients. Scientists before us have looked at this and they have come up with conversion factors so that for every gram, and now this is the other thing you have to realize, that we speak in metric a lot when we speak in nutrition. For every gram, which is very small, of carbohydrate, you get 4 calories. For every gram of proteins, 4 calories, the exact same amount as for carbohydrate. For fat, however, you get twice as many calories, 9 calories per gram. And alcohol, which we don't consider a food, you get 7 calories. But it provides calories, but it primarily is not used efficiently by the body, but rather just stored in the liver and can damage your liver. So the main ones you want to concentrate on are carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So now we will look at the food sources, because you eat foods, not nutrients. Okay? So what you need to find out here is that which foods, and we speak here in terms of food groups, because you have thousands of foods that you could use, and we want to be able to find it manageable. So we group them, and in the Caribbean we use only 6 food groups you have to learn about, rather than the thousands of foods. So if you look at the top, you will see that the carbohydrate-rich food, it has only carbohydrate, would be the fruits food group. And that carbohydrate is in the form of sugar, so it is quite sweet. And we're going to utilize fruits today to give the sugar for some of the meal preparation. Carbohydrate comes from any plant food. Any plant food will give you carbohydrate. But it will come along with protein. The two occur together. So whether you are using the complex carbs, which we call staple foods, vegetables, dried peas and beans, which we call legumes, seeds and nuts, those are all the plant foods. They will have carbohydrate and protein combined, not separate. The ones that you call protein foods really have a combination of protein and fat mostly. That is your foods from animals: meat, fish, chicken, eggs, dairy. Dairy, in addition to having protein and fat, will also have carbohydrate in milk. And then there is the last group, the 6th group, which is fats alone. And we're going to use fats again to show you how to utilize fats in your diet. You don't have to be afraid to have fats, but you have to know how to measure it to utilize it. Okay? So, you see that fuel as calories comes from many, many foods. And there are many different ways of counting these calories. As I said before, there is the chemical analysis in the laboratory. But for us outside of the lab, we have analyzed information compiled into what is called food composition table. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is a food composition table. Many pages of food values that nutritionists have to become familiar with. Now what we do is we use those values and select whichever food we are eating by type, form, and weight, and then we can get the calorie value adjusted for how much you're eating. Now fortunately there are many apps these days of electronics. We have apps on the media that you can access. For example, the United States Department of Agriculture has a very useful one that summarizes the information, and you can generate the calories that you need. For us as laypersons, what we do is we use quantities of food measured out as what we call servings. And we're going to look at food labels for you to understand servings a little bit better. Right? That is the amount of foods that will give you a particular calorie value depending on the weight of that food. And these servings can be found in different calorie counters. Again, you can have them online, or you can have books of calorie counter. So MyFitnessPal is an app online that a lot of persons use that give you calories per servings. Okay, and that is the way we as nutritionists would like the layperson to be able to count calories using servings. So, let us look, for example, at food labels, because a lot of products are packaged and you will see a lot of numbers on these packages. And so you need to know how to understand and utilize these numbers. So these food standards are created in different countries according to the public health laws of the country. And usually we use or pattern the American standards. So this is why if you use the apps online, all you really have to do is to find your local foods, or to find the food in their app that most similarly patterns your food, and then you'll use those values. So when you look at a food label, you look at this one, for example, right away the first thing that hits you is calories. Okay? Calories. And you see here, that label says 260 calories. Now the one on the right with all the colors, if you look at it, it also says 260 calories. So then you will say, okay, these two products have the same amount of calories. But that is not necessarily so. What you need to do is to look higher up on the label to see what is a serving size. Because serving sizes can differ, and manufacturers are given a lot of leeway into how they describe serving sizes. So if you look on the package to the left, you will see that it has a serving as half a cup, whereas the one to the right has a serving as 1 cup. So therefore, they are not equal. The one on the right has 260 calories in 1 cup. The other one has 260 calories in half a cup. So to equate it, you will have to double it up, right? To say, well, how many calories would I get then in 1 cup of the label on the left? And that is how you'll be able to count calories and see if the two products are equal in calories. Okay, so that's food labels. Right, this is a label from a Jamaica bun, for example, and I don't know how clear it is, but you will see that it puts a serving size at 2 ounces. And the calories for that 2 ounces is 180. So if you want to eat more than the 1 slice they are suggesting, you have to cut it to the weight they are also suggesting. So they give you the total weight on the whole bun, which as you see here is 28 ounces. And if your slice is going to be 2 ounces, it means then that you will get 14 slices out of this bun. So that way you can now apply the calories that you see on the label to how much you are eating. All right? Now, in terms of nutrition, counting with nutrition in mind, not just calories, we have 3 skills that you need to learn in terms of your mathematical skills. You need to know portioning, which is what we are going to do first. You need to know measurement. You need to know how to weigh foods or how to measure by volume. And then you need to know a little bit, or at least the person who is going to prepare it needs to know a little bit, because if you buy food in the raw weight, you're going to have waste. And so you need to know how much, say, yam or dasheen or plantain, when you remove the waste, how much calories are you going to get from that particular food? Because fresh foods do not usually carry a label. By law, they are not required to carry a label, only packaged foods. So you then, for the fresh foods, and you're encouraged to have more fresh foods, good for your body, then you will have to learn how to count those calories. Okay, so we'll move on. Right, so nutrition scientists, that's another term for nutritionists. The scientists are those who work in the lab. The nutritionists, we have determined portion sizes for the various food groups. And this ensures that once you eat a particular weight, and you can learn to identify them visually, they will not only have similar calories, but they will have similar nutrients, other like protein, vitamins, minerals, okay? Now, again, we use the Caribbean 6 food groups, not each individual food, so to speak. We have these values assigned, and so we are going to look at 2 pictorials, one we call a plate 1 and one called plate 2. Now, it depends on what you want from your meal. So, when we look at plate 1, see nice colors, we see some lines that show distribution of the particular food groups. These lines are distributed according to the percent of calories among the food group that you are going to require daily. Okay? So you'll see that the largest segments are what you call your carbs, your legumes, as you saw before, the foods that have carbohydrate and protein together. And then you have the other carbs, vegetables and fruits. And then you will have, because I said protein comes from all of those foods except for fruits, you will see that you don't need to eat as much foods from animals, which is the meat, fish, and so on. And you don't need to eat much of that fat. That way you'll keep down the fat content of your diet. Now, the way this is distributed is based on our traditional Caribbean diet. And of course, this is why our athletes have been so excellent in the international arena all along, because the way we eat traditionally is the best way also for athletes. Unfortunately, we are moving away from how we used to eat and are moving towards American influences. So our Ministry of Health, the Plate 2, has come up with a different distribution because we are now concerned with obesity, not just performance. We have a serious problem of obesity, right? Too many overweight and obese children and adults. And so you'll see that for Plate 2, the next one, we see the distribution slightly different. They have reduced slightly the food groups, staple foods, and legumes. They have increased the vegetables. Now, this is because the vegetables are very bulky. You're not able to eat too much at a time, and so it is not called what we call energy dense. Whereas the other foods are more compact, whether they are processed like flour or cornmeal, you know, or the nuts and so on. So they are energy dense. Whereas our Ministry of Health wants us to eat more vegetables and fruits which are not as energy dense because they are more bulky. So you'll see those parts of the chart are a little bigger. All right, but the one before is the one that we promote for athletes because athletes generally need energy. If you are in a sport that needs not so much energy, not so much calories, like ballet dancers, gymnasts, and so on, the second plate might be more appropriate for you. All right, so let's move along. So we give calorie values to the different food groups. Now, if you are in hospital, for example, the dietitians use a different calorie value for the food groups, okay, because persons are not so well, they are lying down in hospital bed. But when you need a lot of calories, I've created a system to help you count, whereby all the food groups in particular quantities will have the same calorie count, and as you see there, it's 100 calories. Why 100 calories? I found it to be so simple. Not only that, it's easy to count, because if you equate it with $100 bills, everybody can count up their $100 bills. So the same way you add up your $100 bills is the same way you're going to add up your 100 calorie food equivalents, okay? So that's a simple way of counting. So let us see then how it works. Next slide. Right, so at the back of the Caribbean Calorie Counter book, you will see a list of foods within the food group, within each food group, that gives you a standard amount that will yield this 100 calories. Okay, and as I said before, you count them by $100 bills. If you find the counting a little tedious, the younger ones, for example, you can always get help from the older ones, or you can speak to whoever is seen about your nutrition, your sports nutrition professional, and they will assist you with this. Okay, so we are going to move on. Right, so the calories are standardized across all the food groups, and the amounts are in units, usually imperial as well as metric, to allow easy conversion, because sometimes, like when you buy things in the market, they tell you they're still using pounds, right? But those of you who are now going to school, they are teaching you metric. So sometimes we have to learn how to convert. And as I said, you have to learn to differentiate between amounts that have raw weight, which we call as purchased, and amounts that are ready to cook and eat, which we call edible portions. All right? So here we have, let's move along. Here we have a summary list of the foods in the food groups. Can we move along? Right, here we are. So these are summary lists. These are the food groups, and all those quantities you see there are 100 calorie amounts. So we are looking at, for example, bread. Most standard slices of bread will give you 100 calories. Not all, we're going to look at some differences. Most other dry forms of cereals, the grains like the rice grains, the cornmeal, the wheat flour, and so on, that's what we call dry. They will measure 1 ounce 1 ounce measure will give you 100 calories. And this doesn't matter whichever grain you are talking about, even if it comes from a box, like cornflakes or raisin bran or whatever. Okay? The provisions, which are also carbs, complex carbs, they are in a wet form, and you buy them at the market in that wet form. They are not dry. So in that case, the 1 ounce dry equates with 3 to 4 ounces wet. So for example, the popular snap banana chip. If you take a banana, a green banana, and you weigh it, you'll find it weighs between 3 to 4 ounces. Now, if you slice it up very thin and dry it to make banana chips, you will see that the water goes and it collapses to about 1 ounce. So that makes it now dry weight, and so 1 ounce of banana chip would give you converted back to 3 to 4 ounces of a green banana, or green fig as they say in Trinidad. Okay? Then now you have to add any ingredients that go in to help prepare that. So with the banana chips, they might use oil, okay, in frying, and that we count separately as the fat. As you can see there, these are usual amounts that you would use at home in food preparation. Okay? So the same thing with the peas. 1 ounce dry will give you 100 calories. See how simple? So for those of you who are making your peas and rice on your rice and peas, the peas can replace some of the rice, and you still only count it as 100 calories. Okay? However, it will then cook up, so it depends on how fluid it is being cooked. So in a canned form, right, in a canned form or in stew, it would swell up to half a cup. Okay? And so that would also have 100 calories. For vegetables, as I said, they are very bulky, so you would require a whole pound of vegetables to equate with 100 calories. That's a lot of vegetables, and so you'd prefer to divide it up, and we are going to illustrate how you might divide it up into smaller servings. All right? The next one shows you all the foods from animals, and by and large, these equate with about a quarter cup measure, which will soon be illustrated to you what a quarter cup looks like. And so all of them have a measure that will give you 100 calories. For cheese, 1 ounce. See how simple? 1 ounce we come back to again. Then we have the fats and oils. Primarily 1 tablespoon is 100 calories. And for the fresh fruits, drinks such as juices we use under fruit, you'll probably see coconut water there under juice, and this can be explained. And then sugars, because as I said, fruits and juice have only carbohydrate in the form of sugar. So if you equate it with regular sugar that is made to sweeten, you will see that a certain amount will give the same 100 calories. Okay, the flavored water that we use as sports drinks, you need a whole pint or 2 cups of that, pretty much like the coconut water, to give you the 100 calories. So let us look at some pictures now. Okay, this is the other book you would have heard about, the Caribbean Diets for Fitness and Sports Success. This one is available on the Kindle, so if you go upon Kindle, those of you who are not in Jamaica and want to be able to access it, you can read it, part of it, and purchase the rest of it free. I mean, read a part of it free and purchase the rest of it from Kindle and Amazon. Okay, so let us look at some pictures now so you can become more familiar with what we mean by portions. So here we have different types of bread. We have brown bread and we have white bread. Now what you'll notice is that some people think that the white bread has more calories than the brown bread. This is not so. It's according to how thick you cut it. As you can see there, the weight, 37 grams, 38 grams are about the same. So that will give you 100 calories. So it doesn't really matter whether it is white or brown. It is the size of it. And to prove it to you, go to the next slide. We will show you hard-dough bread, for example. See a slice of hard-dough bread there, which is wheat bread, but it is cut thicker. It is 50 grams, and hence it will have more calories, 130. So if you want to equate it, you would have to eat less of it, usually about 3/4 of it, to get the same 100 calories. So it's according to how thick you cut it. Now you have there on the left even smaller slices. As I said, persons with chronic illnesses like diabetes and so on may prefer to use those smaller slices. Each one of those is only 67 calories. So To get the same 50 grams as the hard dough bread there, you'd have to use 2 of those slices. So it just depends on the product or the brand you choose and how much weight that they choose to put into that serving. Okay, so let's move along. So here we have sugar, right? Some of you call it sweet bread. We have bun, okay? And this has sugar, but remember, sugar is just another form of carbohydrate. So hence again, if you cut it to a certain size, if you see the slice of bun there, which is 30 grams, just about an ounce, you'll see you get 100 calories. If you prefer to use your bun in that round bun, like how some of the teenagers use it as a snack, you will see that the weight is about 4.5 ounces. Coming back again to cereal, 1 ounce dry is equal to 100 calories. We can expect to get 450 calories from that bun. And for the Jamaicans who eat Jamaican bulla, not the Barbadians, I know they have a different meaning for bulla. For the Jamaicans, we eat Jamaican bulla, it's the same thing. 400 calories for a bulla, and it is almost virtually from carbohydrate. Okay, moving right along. More carbohydrate, high foods, crackers. Again, depending on the size, 4 large crackers will be equal to 7 small crackers. So I need to tell you, those persons who are concerned about their weight, when you buy a packet of crackers and you sit down, oh, these are light, so I can eat plenty of it, right? But you are concerned about your weight, okay? Remember that a packet of 28, okay, crackers would be 700 calories. Yes, okay? So you double up and triple up according to the amount. Always remember, weight and amount, very important in nutrition. Okay, moving right along again. Here we have the flour. We will make dumplings. We will show you how to make dumplings. So here you have the dry flour, 100 calories. When you add the water, you get dough. That dough can be boiled, made into spinners, or it can be fried, and we will illustrate that today. Moving along again. Here we have the wet products, the yam from the market. You get to see what a quarter pound looks like. When you peel it on the right, you get 3 ounces, and we usually cut it in 2, right? That is 100 calories as well. Okay, so some people seem to think that rice is more fattening than yam or whatever. This is not really so. It's according to how much you select to have on your plate. All right? Vegetables, as I told you, quite bulky. So you'll need at least a pound market weight to get 100 calories. So you see, vegetables would fill up the plate. So if you are trying to watch calories, get low calories again, what you do is fill up the plate with vegetables. That will fill you up, and so you won't be tempted so much by the energy-dense products. So if you separate it into 2 cups, right, then you can have it on 2 different occasions. All right, moving right along. Pumpkin is the next one, I think. Right, you see that the pound there can be divided into 3 if you don't want to have so much vegetables at a time. You can divide it into 3 half cups. All right? Now some foods are combination foods, as we'll see next. Again, the Jamaican patty and the Jamaican cocoa bread. Right? A large patty will have approximately 400 calories, as you see there. Just like a cocoa bread, approximately 400 calories. Okay, so if you have a patty and a cocoa bread, you add the 2 together, that will give you approximately 800 calories. That is just like eating a box lunch, a full box lunch of cooked food. There we go. A full box lunch, 750 calories, just about the same amount of calories. All right? So some people eat patty and cocoa bread and say they're having a snack. Oh, sure, you're having a snack, but it is a snack that is equate to a full meal of food. This is another one. This is Chinese food. Some people like to eat out. Right? The same amount of calories in a full box of food. For those with smaller appetites or who need less calories, you can divide it into 2 equal parts, and that's 400 calories each. So I hope you enjoyed counting today. Very simple, basic primary school stuff. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now we can demonstrate how some of these measurements are done to give the 100 calories like what we have been talking about. And then we will move on to the diversity now of meal planning. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So as Patricia indicated, we're going to go straight into the demonstration of what she just went through. She gave us the theory and told us about calories, and a lot of us, I'm sure, would want to see what the calories look like, what 100 calories look like, and so on. So our partner who is going to present the demo is Gabriel Julal, and Gabriel is a nutrition and dietetics graduate working with the Ministry of Health in the nutrition unit. She has been there for 1.5 years, and Gabrielle has great plans. She's moving to England in September to pursue her Master of Science degree in nutrition. So the demonstration you'll see here is being done by an expert. Come on up, Danielle, and show us what these calories are all about.
So I'm going to demonstrate that first, and then we'll go into the breakfast. So the banana booster uses obviously one banana. We're going to peel this and add it to the blender. So we use carbohydrates, protein, and fat from different foods in the smoothie to make it balanced. So the two major sources of carbohydrates in this smoothie come from the banana and from the oats. So we're going to use 1/3 of a cup of oats in this presentation. Because as was explained earlier, portion control is very important to ensure that you're getting the correct amount of calories. So here is 1/3 cup. I'm going to just show you how to measure this out. So grab the oats and you need to level it off in memory. We add that to the blender. We add our banana, 1 banana, and we're going to use 12 ounces of milk. We're using skim milk. Skim milk is very low in fat, so you don't have to worry about the calories from fat going over in the smoothie. So as I said, the calories from the carbohydrates come from the banana and the oats, and some come from the milk as well as protein. We're also going to add some peanut butter to it, which will increase the protein content and add a little bit of fat to it as well. So 12 ounces of the skim milk is about 1.5 cups. So you can bear that in mind when you're measuring yours. And we're going to use just 1/2 tablespoon of peanut butter. It adds some nice flavor to the smoothie as well. And the fat in it helps to improve the taste. You know, the banana is sweet already, so it doesn't need any additional sweeteners, but we're going to add some vanilla to it just to improve the taste a little bit more. So you can do without the cinnamon and the vanilla in the smoothie if that's your preference. You don't need it, but I find that it makes it taste a little bit better. More like a milkshake when you add the vanilla and cinnamon to it. So I'm just using here 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm after this, we can blend it up. I'm going to use same half a teaspoon, actually a quarter teaspoon of cinnamon powder. So this will make a nice, easy pre-workout smoothie. So in total, this 12 ounces gives you 350 calories. And that's about 10% of what your calorie needs for the day are based on average student athletes recommended intake of about 3,500 calories. So here we have our banana booster smoothie. So just to go over the ingredients with you again, it is 1 banana, 1/3 of a cup of oats, 12 ounces of skim milk, half a tablespoon of peanut butter, and you can add vanilla and cinnamon to it as well to help boost the flavor. So now we're going to move on to breakfast. So after you exercise, the smoothie will give you enough energy to go through your workout, but you still need some energy to go through the morning. So you're going to have breakfast afterwards. So today we're going to be preparing just some quick sauteed sardine dish and some fried onions. So the first thing we're going to do is wash the sardine tin. You always want to make sure that you wash your tin products before they are used. So this sardine is in water. If you use the one in oil, it will increase the calorie value from what I'm going to tell you, the total value is what we are paying. I also have some onion and scotch bonnet pepper here. And some tomato. You can add sweet pepper to this, scallion, thyme, whatever seasoning you like to improve the taste of it. But the onion or some garlic, tomato should be in it. So while I'm waiting on that to heat up, I'm going to show you how to measure the flour for the fried dumpling. So we're going to use measurements for 4 fried dumplings. So as was explained earlier, 1 ounce of flour will give you a dumpling that's 100 calories. But because these dumplings will be fried, we're adding an additional 30 calories. So each dumpling will be 130 calories. We're going to fry it in 1 tablespoon of oil. You can use a medicine cup to get that measurement. The regular 15 ml measuring cup will do it. And that will give you 1 tablespoon of oil. So each dumpling will be fried in less than 1 teaspoon of oil. So this is self-rising flour. You don't need to add any baking powder or baking soda to it. You just need to add water. And to get the 4 ounces, so remember it's 1 ounce for each dumpling, we're going to use 3/4 cup measurement. So 3/4 cups of self-rising flour. you want to make sure that you're measuring this correctly. So when you add it, don't be like me and don't be like that. When you add it, you want to level it off and then put it in a separate bowl. That's 1/4. So 3/4 cups of self-rising flour, that will give you 4 fried dumplings. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the sardine. So in total, from the fried dumpling, you'll get 520 calories. And the sardine will give you an additional 180 calories. So the breakfast in total is 700 calories and the smoothie is 350. So with the pre-workout shake and breakfast, you'll have a little less than 1/3 of your calorie needs for the day. Which is as it should be, because you should be having at least 3 meals. So here are the fried dumplings. And the sardine I'm going to wait for you. Alright, so that is the end of our demonstration. So just to go back over it with you, you have the pre-workout shake that will give you energy that you need for your morning exercise, your morning training. It's 350 calories. It has banana, oats, peanut butter, and skim milk. Then you can have your breakfast, 4 fried dumplings made with 3/4 cups of self-rising flour, fried in just a tablespoon of oil, which, as I said, you can measure in a medicine cup, with some sardine. Use 1 tin of sardine and you can add your seasoning to it: onion, tomato, sweet pepper, or Scotch-bonnet pepper. Alright, so here we have a full meal. So it looks like a very hearty breakfast, so you can still be mindful of your calories and still get a good amount of food, a nice hearty breakfast and shake to get you through the day. Alright. So thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you enjoy trying these foods when you get the chance for your pre-workout and for your breakfast.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, for that hearty breakfast. Okay, thank you so much. We move along now to our second presenter. She will be delivering on the topic meal planning and budgeting. Welcome Shanika Morgan, who will take us through that topic.
All right, this afternoon I'll be presenting on eating smart, basically planning your meals while budgeting. So we'll be identifying the importance of meal planning and budgeting, and we're looking at the pre-meals during competition training and post-meal or snacks. All right, so there are some basic principles for good meal planning. And as you've heard from the two previous presenters, right, meal planning basically is an incorporation and a combination of putting different foods from the different food groups together, right, to ensure that you're getting the correct mix of nutrients, in addition to the amounts, and that's very important as well. So if you're having the combining foods from the different food groups, and it's very important as well that the amount is taken into consideration. And today we'll be zooming in on nutrient timing as it involves the scheduling of the intake. Why do we really plan meals though? A lot of persons may plan meals for different reasons, right? To reduce your food waste is very critical, because buying only what you need and what you will use is very important. Save money, right? That might have been spent on takeout or convenience foods. And last but not least, you have more awareness about how you are fueling your body. So these are some important tips why it is important for us to plan your meals before time to help you to be organized. Now, what do we consider budgeting? Now, budgeting is basically how much you are getting into as opposed to how much you are spending, right? So for your nutritional aspect of it, it's very important that we decide and to know how much we are getting for our money's worth and for our food, right? So we can't just go out and say that we're going to purchase some stuff for us to eat, however, we do not have the amount of money to pay for it. So we have to be realistic and to know how much is it that I can afford, what do I have on hand, and put a list together to ensure that you're spending adequately and in your range. All right, so as you've already have been identified with the food groups, you have 6 food groups in the Caribbean that we basically use to help us to organize or to plan or get our different nutrients from these food groups so that we can have a balanced and adequate meal and a healthy diet. In planning your meals, as you can see, your staple foods, which are your carbohydrates, which provide your body with energy and is very critical for athletes, you're getting 45% or 45% of your staples group should come from this. And this we're talking about a whole day approach for your entire day's meal intake. The animal foods from our animals, 10 to 20%. Legumes, 10 to 20%. Your vegetables, 5%. Fats and oils, 5%. As you can see, your fats, your fruits as well, 10%. Your miscellaneous, and all of that give us a total of 100%. All right, so for your nutrient timing, there are different episodes or timing that we have to eat throughout the day, right? So we have to space out our time and our meals in different times throughout the day, which will help you to be organized. And also to ensure that you're getting the total amount of nutrients that you will need for your training or your competition. So we have 4 eating episodes here, and this may vary as well depending on the type of sport that you are engaged in and in addition to your age, your gender, and a lot of other different factors as well. So for example, as you're seeing here, the first episode, eating episode, you're getting 32, which is 32% of your calories, which is 700 calories. The second eating episode, which is 4 hours afterwards, which is roughly the same, as you can see. And we're basically spacing our meals, as you can see here. So meal planning is about organizing your day's approach to your meals. So you're spacing your meals between 3 to 4 hours for the day to ensure as well, even if you have a competition and you have to carbohydrate load, it's not easy to get in as much calories as you need to perform at your optimal, right? So we have to ensure that you're eating at a frequent amount throughout the day. Space your meals to ensure that you're getting in the amount of nutrients, and especially the carbohydrates, because the carbohydrates will give you the amount of energy needed to perform at your best, in addition with the other nutrients in the food groups. All right, so in planning your meals, these pictorials are showing you an example of a balanced meal. Now this is a 2-mix meal, and it's showing your food from animals and your carbohydrates on the plate. This will just show you an example how easy it is basically to have a balanced meals and to ensure that it is at the correct timing, so you basically do not have to rush to get anything at a point in time. Because knowing that athletes are not of a busy schedule, right? So a lot of us have a very busy schedule. It's very important that we ensure that our meals are pre-prepped. So pre-prepping your meal is very important, as this will not give you the urge to rush to get anything that you have to think about. So it reduces you have to think about what you are going to get at a particular time. So when everything is organized and you have your meals already planned and have it packaged with you, it's easy for you to have something quick on hand to get ready for your next training or your competition. Now, some quick tips on meal planning. It's very important that you purchase your foods in season. Take advantage of this. These are the times when foods and fruits are in season. It's very cheap. So ensure that at this point in time, you can stock up on them, you can freeze them, put them down for a later use. They can also be incorporated into different various meals. You can blend them, use them in shakes as was demonstrated earlier, right? You can freeze your vegetables that are in season, put them in soups, for example. You can take that along with you after they're prepared. So plan meals around the foods that you already have as well, right? It's not as if we're telling you to purchase anything that's outside of your budget, also what you do not have, but what is currently stocked in your pantry at this point in time or in your cupboard. You can definitely be creative in what you have. So basically, providing you with foods, what you like. It's very important that you use foods that you are used to, what you are comfortable with eating. Choose foods that are rich in carbohydrates, moderate in protein, and low in fat. Avoid sugary foods right before exercise, and also drink plenty of fluids before your training or your competition. Now, it's very important that you allow plenty of time for your food to digest. It's not pretty if you're having a competition or you're training and you just had a large plate of food to eat. it will not be digested in time for you to perform your activities optimally. So ensure that you're spacing your times, as I mentioned before, 3 to 4 hours for your large meals, 2 to 3 hours for your smaller meals, and at least 1 to 2 hours before your competition or training for a snack, right? So the liquid foods, you leave the stomach much faster than solid foods. So if you're having your training or your competition, to prepare for that, ensure that you're having something that is easily digestible, right? And even in a time where you have your training and the competition, nerves really take the best of us. And that's very important as well, that we know what to eat and what to expect from our own bodies, because no one else knows our bodies but you. So try not to practice or to try out any new foods at that point in time if you're having any competition, right? Ensure that if you want to introduce something in your diet before, ensure you are comfortable doing that way before that time, to ensure that your body is used to it and accustomed to it, but not right before your competition. Right? So always eat your familiar foods before competition. So well-balanced meal or high-calorie snack 3 to 4 hours prior to practice or a competition, and even for early morning events, at least 2 hours. Sometimes you have to get up very early in the morning, and a lot of persons bypass having anything to eat. And after that point in time, after your training, you may have, a lot of persons, have experienced, they have a fainting feeling. They do not have enough energy to prolong for the day. And some may end up fainting because the lack of the amount of energy that they have not had due to not having enough. You're not eating properly, you're not scheduling your meals on time. So all of this eventually will affect your training schedule and your competition, how well you'll be performing. So it's very critical that meal planning takes place all the time. You can take one day out of the week to ensure that you are having, just set a plan for the week or even for the day as you go along. Start small to ensure that everything is in place for you, so you don't have to rush to get anything at a last minute to have. So here are some fueling strategies for your training and competition, right? So practice careful timing of eating to avoid a full stomach, as I'd mentioned, to hinder your performance. Now, pre-game meals with minimal fat, right? And familiar foods 2 to 3 hours in advance. Avoid foods that cause distress. For example, high fiber foods. So top up with extra carbohydrates and protein intake of at least 10 to 15 grams with lead time of only at least 10 to 15 minutes if exercise lasts for over an hour, right? So it's best that you use your liquid meals intake to replace that. And no need to fear. You can consult with your nutritionist, who will definitely go through this with you, because each athlete and each person's diet vary according to their sport, their age, and different classification of that person. So speak with your nutritionist, and we'll be very much happy to speak with you to go through and to provide a best plan for you. And it's very important as well that post-training, after your post-training, you are getting in your carbohydrates and your necessary nutrients in as quickly as possible within a 20-minute mark period, so that you can fuel up on your glycogen stores, right? So it fuels the muscles and your body. It prevents hunger during exercise, and to help prevent your injury related to dehydration. Now, an example of a pre-game meal, you can have a glass of skim milk, a small piece of baked chicken. You can, as I mentioned, you can use foods that are in season. So if a lot of us have mango trees, So make use of what you have surrounding you. We have a lot of fruit trees here in Jamaica. Who eats grapes or different type of fruits? You can incorporate it in your diet. And for this instance, you have a slice of bread, and that could automatically give you an approximately 350 calories right there for your pre-game meal. Now, during your training and the competition, right, it's very important that you're hydrating, even if it's over 60 minutes, right? So there is no need to consume anything during most times during the competition, or mostly competitions, with possible exception of your carbohydrates and water, right? So carbs, as I mentioned, provide additional supplies of the preferred energy source during prolonged exercise. For example, your rehydration fluids is best at this point in time, where you're getting your electrolytes back in after they're lost. Now, water intake is critical for the regulation of your body temperature when exercising, especially in warm or hot environments and climates. For your post-game, right? So basically, after you've had your training, your competition, at this point in time, this is very critical to ensure that what you've lost, the amount of energy and electrolytes that you've lost, you're getting back in. All right? So ensure that your carbohydrate is you're getting back your carbohydrates in, along with your protein, and to ensure that you're keeping fats at it's a minimum at this point in time. So fruits such as bananas, oranges, apples, anything that is considered, your simple carbs basically, or canned fruit, dried fruits, or fruit juice. These are some sample menus for your post-game meals. Carbohydrate-rich foods, you can have a box of cereal with milk. Calcium-rich foods such as yogurt, fat-free milk, low-fat string cheese. Legume foods such as your peanuts. You can have a sandwich, a chicken sandwich, or a protein sandwich, anything, or lean protein basically. And for persons who may be vegetarians, a lot of times we really don't concentrate on the persons who are vegans or vegetarians as well. But there's also the food group that provides you with your protein for that, and that's your legumes and your nuts. So you get that in also in your diet. You can incorporate your lentils, right? Split peas, use up your peas, your beans, and your nuts in your diet if you're vegan. And it's also very important as well that non-vegans or non-vegetarians as well incorporate more nuts and seeds in your diet on a daily basis. So basically, to summarize everything, ensure that you're pre-planning your meals. Take your time, right, for meal planning, and to prepare your times to separate to ensure that you are having your meals on time, right, so you don't have to rush. Minimize the rushing of catching something either on the road. It's very good that you can take something along with your pre-prepared meals from your home, and practice having balanced diets. All right, thank you so much. That's the end of my presentation. I see a question here. What is considered miscellaneous as it pertains to food group? All right, so miscellaneous basically could mean your sugar, right? So sugar, even though it is a part of the staples group, right? Because it is, or carbohydrates basically is broken down into the body as sugar at the end of the day, right? So in terms of miscellaneous, in what was mentioned, it is just saying other things that are not necessarily a part of the food group, but you could consider as sugar.
as promised, prizes to give away for the first correct answers to the question. So the first question is, what are the 6 food groups as presented by our first speaker? You should see the questions on your screen there. Why was a separate food plate developed by the Ministry of Health in Jamaica? And what is the calorie amount for the shake and why is it significant? So from the demonstration that we did, what was the calorie amount for the shake and why is it important? So the first persons to answer those questions, we will contact you regarding your prizes. We move along now to our third and final speaker to address the topic of optimal hydration. And this afternoon we have Dr. Claudia Campbell, who will be presenting on that topic. Dr. Campbell is currently the consultant clinical nutritionist at the JCF, Jamaica Constabulary Force. She also has private practice specializing in bariatric nutrition. She holds a PhD in human nutrition and metabolism with a focus on developmental origins of health and diseases from the UWI. She has a Master of Science degree in nutrition, also from UWI, B.Ed in secondary education, certificates in sport and bariatric nutrition and obesity and weight management. She has 8 years experience as a research scientist, nutritionist, specializing in developmental origins of health and disease and energy balance at the Tropical Medicine Research Institute and Solutions for Developing Countries. Focus was also given to writing proposal, project management, preparation of technical papers and articles, creating and evaluating practical educational food-based interventions to encourage healthy lifestyle changes in the management of non-communicable diseases, nutritional assessment, counseling, and product development. Dr. Campbell's role at the JCF includes providing technical guidance and support to policymakers on nutrition and the management of lifestyle disease in the promotion of healthy lifestyle. She monitors and evaluates the nutrition program and also responsible for the establishment of the nutrition monitoring system and developing nutritional surveillance tools to gauge impact of nutritional interventions. Her other interests include involvement with mentorship programs, body fitness, sports nutrition, and product development. She strongly believes that health begins with conception. Early life factors play a huge role in our susceptibility to lifestyle diseases in later life. Welcome, Dr. Claudia Campbell, to pilot us through optimal hydration.
Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon I'll be presenting on hydration, and the presentation will go as follows. We're going to start by discussing hydration, look at the effects of dehydration on performance, then we're going to go through the strategies for optimizing hydration and a summary at the end of it. So we looked at putting together an eating plan for an athlete, but an important part of that plan ought to be hydration, because hydration impacts an athlete's performance. So the important thing is to actually maintain normal hydration status, and that is actually essential to sustain life. The normal hydration status is typically maintained over the course or the day-to-day course of life, and this is by behavioral changes or biological controls. So the body has set systems that regulates your hydration status, but your behavior such as choosing to drink water, having foods that have high water content, that would be considered behavioral strategies. It is important to note that exercise can cause an acute disruption to your fluid balance. So this is going to challenge the athlete's goal of optimal performance and safety during exercise, especially in hot environmental conditions, such as we often experience in Jamaica. So how do you actually assess your hydration status? This is extremely important when it comes to performance and being an athlete. It's important to know from a day-to-day basis, how is it that your hydration status varies, what exactly affects your hydration status. So hydration status can be utilized to indicate one current hydration state. But if you take it serially, like for example, you've been watching your hydration status over an entire week, it can be used to track your fluid intake, and it can be a useful tool for athletes. Now, optimal hydration actually reflects a physical state of having normal body water and electrolytes. Now, the hydration status is actually a useful paradigm to tracking the daily changes in your hydration status in sporting situations. And you need to consider a combination of assessment tools to track your daily changes. But there's actually a simple approach that you can use. And on the slide, you'll see figure 1, which is a useful criteria for just tracking the variables in your body mass. Now, when your body mass changes are greater than 1.1%, it creates a conscious desire for water, and that creates what we call thirst. Then there's another aspect where you look at the color of your urine. So dark colored urine indicates varying degrees of fluid inadequacy. And when two of these factors are combined, for example, variables in your body mass and color change in your urine, it is suggesting that there's a likely inadequate amount of fluid. Now, if 3 factors are present, it's going to indicate that the daily fluid intake is very likely inadequate. So in terms of hydration assessment, you need to watch your body mass, changes in your body mass on a daily basis. You need to watch the color of your urine, and you also need to pay attention to changes in thirst. Now we're going to move on to body water and electrolyte losses. Now, your daily body water loss comes from urine, feces, sweat, and respiration. However, body fluid loss during sports or exercise results largely from sweating. And in weather that is temperate or warmer weathers, the sweating can account for as great as 50% of body heat removal and close to 100% in extremely hot conditions. Performance can decrease if your water loss goes to 2% or more of your total body weight. So if you're an athlete and you're tracking your body weight over time during exercise, during workout, during competition, and you're having loss greater than 2%, then that causes a concern. Now, it's extremely important that you pay attention to pre-hydration prior to your exercise, as this helps you to avoid excessive losses during exercise. So one of the fundamental things is to ensure that you're actually hydrated before going into the exercise or before going into competition. So what causes some persons to sweat more during exercise, or what may actually affect your sweat rate during exercise? So the rate of sweating is primarily the body's way of cooling it down after heat is produced. But it can be modified by a number of factors. So your body size can affect your sweat rate. So larger persons tend to sweat more. So larger athletes are going to sweat more compared to smaller athletes. Exercise intensity, your exercise duration, and the environmental conditions are also going to affect your sweat rate. And your choice of clothing will also impact your sweat rate. So these factors explain more than 90% of the variance in sweat rate that we see among athletes. For example, exercise condition. The amount of water lost in sweat can dramatically increase from 1 to 2 liters per hour compared to the normal loss, which is about 100 to 200 milliliters per day on a non-exercise day versus in cool temperature versus in warm weather. So all this is saying is that if there's a change in temperature, more than likely your sweat rate is going to actually change. And it's important to keep in mind that sweating rates in athletes range from as little as 0.2 liters per hour to 2 liters per hour. If you look, for example, at a sprinter doing a 100-meter race as opposed to a football player, we talk about, for example, American football, where they have all of this clothing on. They have all the gears out there. The sweat rates can actually vary and increase. So typical fluid needs for athletes range from 2 to 4 liters per day, and you need to replace this loss and in order to dilute your metabolic and dietary waste that are produced. So a typical 2-hour per day track and field training session could actually increase your fluid needs by 1 to 6 liters per day. Now this sweat loss or fluid loss includes sodium and potassium, and this can amount to about 1 gram per liter, and which at the lower end, if you're having a normal diet, a good diet, your electrolytes can be replaced. But at the upper end, you may actually have to pay attention to replacing your electrolytes. And that is where rehydration comes in. So at a minimum, track and field athletes must replace body water and electrolyte losses daily. And failure to do so can actually lead to dehydration, poor training, and competition outcomes. Now, in this table here, we're actually looking at what's a possibility of dehydration occurring in certain sports. Now, the table is divided into, we have sports that are like jumping, and we'll talk about high jumping, long jumping. Then we look at sports like throwing, javelin, sprints, you have middle distance running, and long distance running. Now, the possibility of dehydration taking place is going to be resting on a number of factors. The first factor is whether or not that athlete went into the competition being fully hydrated. The second thing is how the competition is organized. For example, in sprinting, you have breaks between the events, so you can always take in some amount of water. In long distance running, you're actually going longer periods, so your sweat loss is going to be more. So the opportunity to have fluid is greater. Whether or not you're dehydrated is also dependent on the availability of water. So when you're putting together any competition, you need to ensure that there's water available for these athletes. So athletes at higher risk of dehydration, so we're going to move to hyperhydration. So there's wanting to be adequately hydrated. On one end of the continuum, there's dehydration, not having enough fluid intake. Then on the other end of the continuum, there's hyperhydration, where you're having too much fluid intake. So hyperhydration usually occurs when there's free water intake greater than the sweat loss, or you have large sweat or sodium loss. So basically, hyperhydration is when the athlete is taking in too much free water and not losing enough in sweat. Now, athletes at greater risk for hyperhydration includes women and older adults. Smaller athletes who tend to run slowly, they sweat less and drink more fluids. And you have football and tennis players who may overhydrate because they want to prevent cramping during an event. So there's also a phenomenon called hypohydration, and this one can actually be deliberate. Hypohydration is actually voluntary dehydration, and it's present in what we call aesthetic sports. You know, those sports where the physical appearance is extremely important. So we talk about gymnastics, we talk about bodybuilding. For example, in bodybuilding, there's a time when they call a drying out period, where they drastically cut your fluid intake because you want your muscles to appear better on the night of competition. However, there are actually health consequences associated with hypohydration. So you have muscle fatigue, loss of concentration, poor exercise performance, and in some cases, cardiac arrest and death. So what are the effects of dehydration on your performance in the event that you're not having enough fluid? So dehydration actually increases strain and the perceived exertion for the same task. When you compare running a 100-meter sprint fully hydrated as opposed to dehydrated, there may be some lagging in your performance. Also, dehydration is exaggerating in warm conditions. You would see less effect of dehydration in cold conditions. And dehydration is actually seen when there's a loss of more than 2% in your body weight. And that causes a decrease in aerobic performance, especially in hot conditions. Dehydration that causes 2% body weight loss may decrease your mental and cognitive performance. So dehydration affects you both physically in terms of your performance, and it also affects you mentally. Now we're going to explore the strategies for actually optimizing your hydration. How is it you ensure that you're fully hydrated going into a competition? So the current consensus out there recommends that good hydration practice should include the following. It's important that you begin your exercise in a state of normal hydration, preventing excessive hypohydration during exercise, and replacing remaining losses following exercise prior to the next exercise session. All that is saying, before you actually begin the session, ensure you're fully hydrated. You're going to prevent excessive hypohydration by ensuring that you're replacing your fluids and you're also replacing your electrolytes. However, it's important as an athlete to keep in mind that fluid needs are individualistic. Yes, they have recommendations out there, but it's extremely important as an athlete you work out exactly what it is that you ought to get and how much. This is affected by your personal sweat rate. Individuals sweat at different rates. The exercise mode, the intensity of the exercise, and the environmental conditions will all affect your sweat rate. So some other strategies is establishing a hydration plan. Before you go into competition, you need to know what the plan is. You would have already know what your competition is. Is it that you're a sprinter, long distance runner, or you're going into a marathon? So you need to know the situation you're getting into. You also need to know your environmental conditions, because temperature does affect your hydration status. You need to ensure that there's availability of fluids for hydration, and this is usually up on the coach. You need to ensure that your athletes have adequate fluid available. The athletes themselves need to ensure that they have adequate fluids. It's also the onus on the athlete to ensure that you're monitoring your body weight, because in order to know how much you're losing, you need to have an idea of what your body weight is. So that's basically some fundamental principles in establishing a hydration plan. So looking at other strategies for optimizing your hydration, how do you work with the environmental conditions? First, you're going to measure your local environmental condition to determine the risk of your high sweat rate. That may result in large fluid loss. Let's say you're used to working out in Jamaica. You're accustomed to what the climate is, but if you're going to travel overseas and you're going to change environment, it's important that you are able to determine what the local environmental conditions are going to be. You need to increase fluid replacement during exercise in hot and humid environments to account for, again, the increased sweat loss that's going to occur. You're going to account for clothing or equipment that you may be using in competition or you may be using in training. And you're going to modify your fluid intake based on whether it's cold or if the altitude has actually changed. Hydration is also affected by the meals that you consume, because food does contribute some amount of fluid to you. So meal consumption is critical to ensure full hydration from a day-to-day basis. So you're going to consume food that promotes fluid intake and retention. You're going to also consume foods that are able to help you reestablish your electrolyte balance. So, looking at fluid replacement pre-exercise, what it is that you focus on before you actually go into competition or before you start the exercise process. Remember, the goal is to have optimal hydration. You don't want to be dehydrated going into a competition. But if you don't have optimal hydration prior to the exercise or competition, let's say you go in between events and you didn't have 12 hours or more to actually rest and to drink your fluids and to consume your food. then you need to actually drink fluid slowly at least 4 hours prior to the exercise. And this can be done at approximately 5 to 7 milliliters per kg of your body weight. You can also check your urine. If the urine is dark or your urine output is low, you can drink some more fluid 2 hours prior to the exercise, and you can use approximately 3 to 5 milliliters per kg body weight. Now, consuming beverages with sodium or having salty snacks or food will assess in your fluid retention. That will actually help you in keep how much fluid you retain after consuming it. So, fluid replacement during the exercise. Now, during the exercise, the goal is actually to prevent excessive dehydration. Remember, excessive dehydration is greater than 2% loss of your body weight. And you want to prevent any change in your electrolyte balance. So, fluid replacement should mirror your sweat loss, because you don't want to be replacing more fluid than you're actually losing in sweat. So we use a range, because sweat loss can range from 0.4 to 2.4 liters per hour, depending on the athlete, depending on the type of competition, depending on your environmental conditions. So you should not be excessive in your fluid intake in exercise for greater than 3 hours. So in exercise for greater than 3 hours, you're going to periodically drink. Don't drink at every water station. And we're talking about like the marathon runners. For marathon runners, it's safe to take in 0.4 to 0.8 liters per hour. For slower, thinner athletes, most at risk for overhydration in activity greater than 3 hours, it's important for them to monitor their sweat loss. There's also an exception for salty sweaters. There are persons who lose more sodium in their sweat than others. This is going to determine your electrolytes. How much sodium do I take back in? How much fluid do I consume? So after the exercise, the aim for fluid replacement after exercise is actually to fully replace your fluid and electrolyte deficits. In mild deficits, your normal consumption, go in and have your meals following your competition, will help to replace your loss. In approximately 12 hours, some of your losses will replace. But for more moderate deficits with a shorter recovery time, let's say you don't have that 12 hours to play with, but you need to go back into competition. You need a more aggressive approach, and that's where you can look at maybe 1.2 to 1.5 liter per kg weight loss over time. That's how you're going to refuel or rehydrate. So replacing fluid with sodium leads to excessive urine production, and it delays getting to optimal hydration. So that's why it's important when they're talking about fluid intake. It's important to include sodium in there. But at what point do you include the sodium in the rehydration fluid? So it also, when you're using, for persons who tend to get IVs if they're having fluid loss that exceeds 7% of their body weight and there's an inability to ingest your oral fluids, you can also use that approach. So during exercise lasting more than an hour, carbohydrate needs to be taken in, and that can actually be mixed into your rehydration fluid. And you need carbohydrate that is rapidly converted to blood glucose. So that's where the use of commercial sports drink may actually come into play. And usually they have a carbohydrate content of 4 to 8%, and this allows you to actually meet your fluid need. So basically when you mix carbohydrate with the fluid, it helps you to also retain more fluid. But it's important to stick to a familiar sports drink. On the day of competition is not when you want to introduce something new into your regime. So sodium should be included in fluids consumed during exercise lasting greater than 1 to 2 hours, or by individuals who actually have heavy sodium loss. And the sodium range that are included in most sports drinks is usually 500 to 700 milligrams. Caffeine, does this help with dehydration? Now, there's evidence to suggest that caffeine enhances endurance and performance during the later stages of prolonged exercise. And benefit can actually be obtained with relatively small doses of caffeine. And small doses mean about 2 to 3 milligrams per kg of your body weight, or that would work out to about 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine, or equivalent to 1 to 2 cups of brewed coffee or about 700 to 1500 ml of Pepsi. The other thing that you need to focus on when it comes to rehydration, or when it comes to hydration status, is actually alcohol intake. Now, alcohol has a strong diuretic effect. It increases your urine output and can actually interfere with your recovery. It actually delays the process, especially glycogen synthesis. So after a competition and you have depleted your storage, it is best not to consume alcohol. So it should be avoided when timely recovery between training sessions is of key importance, especially when you have a small amount of time to play with. That is not the time when you actually want to consume alcohol. So in summary, it's important to remember individuality when you're talking about hydration. Each individual has a different sweat rate. So individual safety and performance is actually optimized when your body mass loss are limited to less than 2%. So any body mass loss that you're going to have during exercise or competition, you want to limit that to less than 2%. Now, competitive athletes striving for maximal performance may benefit from a strategy based on replacing sweat loss during prolonged activity. So any rehydration or any hydration that you're thinking of, you need to keep your sweat rate in mind, because that's a primary determinant of how much fluid you're going to be taking in. Exercise performance during intense or long duration events may actually be improved by adding carbohydrates and electrolytes to your rehydration fluids. And hydration strategies for physical active people should address their personal sweat rates, their hydration cues, that's like your thirst if you're feeling thirsty, and your rehydration strategies should avoid both hyperhydration and fluid overload or hyperhydration. Thank you.
Dr. Campbell, thank you so much. Please accept this token as an expression of our thanks for taking the time out to come and present on the topic. Thank you very much, Mr. Samuda. We stream through Zoom and YouTube, so you can still send us your answers and we will communicate with you regarding your gift. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining. At the beginning we had some technical issues, but I see that people are able to finally come on. So thank you so much again for joining us and have a wonderful afternoon.